In a coastal town of Tanga, Bakari, a well-respected man in his mid-30s, found himself at a crossroads in life. Known for his steadfast Christian faith and strong values, he had worked tirelessly to build a name for himself as a successful entrepreneur. A devout man, Bakari believed that every step he took should be guided by God, including the most crucial one he now faced, choosing the woman who would become his life partner. Two women had captured Bakari's heart, but in very different ways. Ade, a beauty from Kilimanjaro, was bold and confident. Having moved to Tanga for work, she had quickly made a name for herself in the corporate world. Ade's intelligence was striking, and her charisma could light up any room. A dedicated Christian like Bakari, she was passionate about community outreach and had a keen sense of adventure. Bakari admired her ambition and the way she always challenged him to dream bigger, pushing him to expand his horizons, both in business and in life. Then there was Subira, a woman whose very name meant patience in Swahili. Subira had grown up in Tanga, her roots deep in the same traditions that had shaped Bakari. Quiet but strong, she was the embodiment of grace and humility. Subira's kindness touched everyone she met, and her faith was unwavering. She worked as a school teacher, dedicating her life to helping the next generation of children rise out of poverty. Bakari appreciated Subira's nurturing spirit and the deep connection they shared, not just through their shared history, but also through their common values. Both women represented different paths. Ade's adventurous spirit and ambition pulled him toward a more dynamic future, while Subira's warmth and calm brought him the promise of peace and deep companionship. The decision weighed heavily on Bakari's heart. With each day, the decision seemed harder, not clearer. His family, friends, and even his church community were beginning to speculate about whom he would choose. One Sunday after church, Bakari found himself seated on a bench overlooking the Indian Ocean. As the waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, he thought about his future and the legacy he wanted to build. His thoughts oscillated between Ade's vibrant energy and Subira's soothing presence. This decision was not just about choosing a wife. It was about choosing the kind of life he wanted to live. After much contemplation, Bakari decided to visit his parents, Mama Anna and Memzi Kibo. Growing up in a family that held traditional values, Bakari trusted his parents' wisdom. He thought their guidance might offer clarity in his decision. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a golden glow over the family's farm, Bakari sat down with his parents. They sipped chai under the large mango tree that had shaded their home for years. "My son," his mother began, placing her hand gently on his. "Marriage is not just about love. It's about the life you build together, the future you both envision." Memzi Kibo, always a man of few words, nodded in agreement. "Ask them, Bakari. Ask them about their plans, about what they see for their future. This decision must be grounded in understanding their goals and how they align with yours." Taking his parents' advice to heart, Bakari arranged separate meetings with both Ade and Subira to discuss their future prospects. The following weekend, Bakari invited Ade to a stylish restaurant near the beach, one that mirrored her vibrant and sophisticated personality. As they sat down, the salty breeze from the ocean sweeping through, Ade smiled warmly. She was dressed in a smart but relaxed outfit, her hair neatly braided, and she exuded the confidence Bakari had always admired. Over dinner, they spoke about their usual topics: work, community projects, faith. But tonight, Bakari decided to ask her about her vision for the future. "Ade," Bakari said, his voice steady, "where do you see yourself in the next few years? What kind of life do you want to build?" Ade didn't hesitate. "I'm ready, Bakari. I've worked hard to get to where I am now. My job is stable and I'm almost done building my house. The only thing missing is a family. I want a husband who shares my values, who dreams of building something meaningful with me. I'm ready to settle down." Bakari nodded, impressed by her clarity. "And what about us? How do you see our future?" I see us as a power couple, Aid said with a twinkle in her eye. We can continue to grow together, help each other rise in both our careers and our faith. I want to have children, start a family, and live in a home where God is the foundation. I think we'd make a great team. Her words stirred something in Bakari. Aid's vision of the future was ambitious but grounded. She was ready for the next step, and there was no doubt that she could bring a sense of drive and excitement into their relationship. But Bakari also felt a sense of pressure, as if the future Ade saw was a fast-moving train, one he had to decide to board, now or never. The next day, Bakari invited Subira to the more serene surroundings of a local park. The simplicity of the place mirrored Subira's calm and grounded nature. As they strolled through the park, surrounded by the sound of birds and the rustle of leaves, Bakari felt at peace. Subira's quiet demeanor had always put him at ease. They sat on a bench under the shade of a large tamarind tree, watching children play in the distance. After a few moments of quiet reflection, Bakari turned to Subira. "Subira," he began softly, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. I'd like to know what your vision is. What kind of life do you want to build?" Subira looked down at her hands, her fingers gently tracing the hem of her dress. She paused before responding, as if carefully weighing her words. "Bakari, to be honest, I don't know what the future holds," she said with a gentle smile. "Life has always been uncertain for me. I take each day as it comes and trust that God will guide me to where I need to be." Bakari listened intently, sensing the deep faith that anchored Subira's heart. "I don't have much going on for me right now," she continued, "but I believe in the power of love, faith, and patience. I want a simple life, one filled with joy and peace. I dream of a family, yes, but I don't know how or when it will happen. I just trust that God will make a way." Her words were different from Aid's. While Aid had a clear and structured plan, Subira's future seemed to be one of openness and trust, letting God direct her path. It was a vision that wasn't rooted in material success, but in the quiet confidence that faith would guide them through whatever challenges might come. As Bakari left the park that evening, he felt more conflicted than ever. Ade's certainty and ambition were admirable, but Subira's peaceful trust in God's plan spoke to his soul in a way that was hard to ignore. The choice before him was not just between two women. It was between two ways of living, two visions of the future. A few days after his conversations with Ade and Subira, Bakari returned to his parents' home. He was eager to share what he had learned, hoping that their wisdom could guide him. As he sat with Mama Anna and Mzi Kibo in the familiar comfort of their living room, Bakari recounted his discussions with both women. Mama Anna listened intently, her hands folded in her lap, while Mzi Kibo leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowed in thought. The atmosphere was heavy as Bakari finished sharing the details. "I spoke with Aid first," Bakari began. "She's ready to settle down. She has a good job and she's almost done building her house. She sees our future as a team, working together, building a life side by side." "And Subira?" Mama Anna asked, her soft voice betraying a hint of concern. "Subira doesn't have a clear plan," Bakari replied, his eyes drifting to the floor. "She says she trusts God to guide her, but she doesn't know what the future holds. She's content with a simple life, focused on faith, love, and patience." Mama Anna and Mzi Kibo exchanged glances. It was clear that each parent had heard something different in their son's words. After a long pause, Mama Anna spoke first. "My son," she said gently, "I see Subira as a good wife for you. She doesn't need to have a grand plan or a big career. You are a man, and it's your role to provide for your family. If Subira stays at home, she can take care of the house, raise your children, and support you in other ways. That will bring you great respect in your home and in the community." Bakari nodded, absorbing his mother's words. Mama Anna had always been a traditional woman, proud of the fact that she had raised her children while Mzi Kibo provided for the family. She believed in the value of a wife who was dedicated to the home, and to her, Subira's humility and faith made her the perfect fit. But before Bakari could respond, Mzee Kibo cleared his throat, his deep voice filling the room. "Bakari, listen to me," his father said, his tone firm but not unkind. "I've been the sole provider for this family for over 30 years. I've worked hard day and night to make sure you and your siblings never went hungry, but it hasn't been easy. I'll be honest with you. The financial burden has been heavy. Your mother is a wonderful woman, but I've often wondered how different things might have been if we had 2 incomes instead of 1. Bakari looked at his father, surprised by the raw honesty in his words. Mzee Kibo continued, "Aid knows what she wants. She's ambitious and successful, and she's not afraid of hard work. 2 incomes, Bakari, means you won't have to struggle like I did. You'll have the chance to build a better life, to give your children more opportunities. And don't think that having a wife who works makes you any less of a man. Times have changed. There's no reason for you to carry the financial load alone." The room fell silent as both parents waited for Bakari's response. For the first time, Bakari could see the weight of his decision from his parents' perspectives. Mama Anna valued tradition and the honor that came with being the head of a household, while Mzee Kibo, worn from years of bearing the financial burden, saw Adi's career as a chance for Bakari to live a life free from the struggles he had endured. Bakari sat back, his mind racing. His parents, who had always been a united front, were now on opposite sides of this decision. His mother's words stirred his heart, reminding him of the strength of a home built on simplicity and faith. But his father's words rang true in a different way. The practical realities of life, the struggles his father had faced, and the possibility of a partnership built on shared responsibility. "Son," Mzee Kibo said softly, sensing Bakari's inner turmoil, "whatever choice you make, know that we will support you. But I want you to think long and hard about the kind of life you want. Marriage is not just about love, it's about building a future. You need to ask yourself what kind of future you want to build and who you want by your side." Mama Anna nodded in agreement, though it was clear her heart leaned toward Subira. "Pray about it, my son. Let God guide you as he always has." Bakari nodded, grateful for their advice, even though it left him more conflicted than ever. His mother's respect and his father's experience weighed heavily on his decision. One path offered tradition, faith, and stability, while the other offered partnership, ambition, and financial security. As weeks passed, the weight of the decision Bakari had to make began to spill over into his parents' home. Though Mama Anna and Mzee Kibo had promised to support whatever choice he made, it was becoming clear that the uncertainty was creating tension between them. Each parent seemed more determined to convince Bakari of their own view, and the peace that had once filled their household began to give way to unspoken strain. Whenever Bakari visited, he could feel the pull from both sides. His mother would mention the qualities of a good wife, subtly highlighting Subira's virtues of humility and patience. Meanwhile, his father would remind him of the importance of building a stable financial future, something Aid's drive and ambition could offer. Though neither of them spoke directly against the other's choice, the tension was palpable. Then, one evening, as Bakari sat in his room praying, he heard his parents quietly discussing the matter in the next room. His mother was frustrated, his father weary. They were both deeply invested in his decision, and it was tearing them apart in a way Bakari had never expected. Frustrated with the growing rift in her home, Mama Anna decided to seek counsel from her longtime friend, Mama Eliza. She had always valued her friend's wisdom, and after explaining the situation, Mama Anna waited for her friend's response, hoping for some words of clarity. "Anna," Mama Eliza began thoughtfully, "I understand why you feel that Subira would make a good wife. She is humble, kind, and her faith in God is strong. But times have changed. The days when a man could provide for the whole family on his own are not as easy as they used to be. You have to think about the financial pressures Bakari will face." Mama Anna listened quietly, her hands resting on her knees. "Let me tell you, Anna," Mama Eliza continued, "financial burdens can ruin even the strongest marriages. If Subira has no clear path or ambition, Bakari will carry all the weight, and that weight can crush even the most loving man. Aid is different. She has a plan. She knows what she wants, and she can help Bakari build a stable future. It's not about tradition anymore. It's about survival in today's world." Mama Eliza's words resonated with Mama Anna in a way that surprised her. For the first time, she questioned whether her advice to Bakari had been too focused on tradition. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew how hard her husband had worked to provide for their family. And maybe, just maybe, things could have been easier if she had been able to contribute financially. Meanwhile, Mzee Kibo, sensing the growing uncertainty in his wife, also sought the counsel of a trusted friend, Mzee Kazi. After explaining the dilemma, Mzee Kibo waited as Mzee Kazi thought over the situation. "Kibo," Mzee Kazi said after a long pause, "I've seen many marriages in my time. A marriage works best when a woman respects her husband and looks up to him for support. A man needs to be the head of the household, and a wife should rely on him. Subira is the kind of woman who will honor Bakari's leadership. She doesn't need to be ambitious or have a job. She will look to him for everything, and that will keep her loyal and humble." Mzee Kibo nodded. These were the values he had grown up with and believed in. His own marriage had worked under these principles, and he had always been proud of the fact that he had provided for his family. The idea of having a wife who was as independent as Aidi felt foreign to him. Mzee Kazi continued, "A woman who is too ambitious might lose respect for her husband. She might start to see herself as equal or even superior. But Subira, she will be the type of wife who knows her place, who will support Bakari in everything, without ever questioning him. She is the obvious choice." Mzee Kibo felt reaffirmed in his belief that Subira was the right woman for his son. He didn't want Bakari to lose the respect of his wife or the authority that came with being the head of the household. As both parents absorbed the advice of their friends, they returned home with renewed convictions. But rather than bridging the gap between them, their consultations had only deepened the divide. Mama Anna, now seeing the merit in Ade's ambition and the practicality of two incomes, began to soften her stance on Subira. Meanwhile, Mzee Kibo, bolstered by Mzee Kazi's words, grew even more certain that Subira's humility and respect for tradition made her the better choice. For Bakari, the tension became unbearable. Every visit to his parents' home was filled with subtle jabs and pointed comments, each of them trying to sway him in their direction. His heart was heavy, and the once peaceful refuge of his parents' home now felt like a battlefield. Bakari knew that time was running out. His parents were eager for a decision, but their growing division left him even more conflicted. The longer he waited, the more he feared that no matter which choice he made, one side would be left disappointed. The tension between Mama Anna and Mzee Kibo had continued for weeks, casting a shadow over their once peaceful home. Both were deeply committed to their son's future, but found themselves in one of the toughest trials of their marriage. They had always been able to navigate challenges together, but this time their differing views on Bakari's decision had pulled them apart. One evening, after yet another strained conversation, Mama Anna began to reflect. She turned to her husband, her voice soft but resolute. "My husband," she said, reaching for Mzee Kibo's hand. "We've been trying so hard to figure this out ourselves. Maybe we need to let God guide us in this." Mzee Kibo, weary from the conflict, nodded in agreement. He missed the harmony they once shared and knew that this division was hurting not just them, but also Bakari. Together, they decided to turn to the one source they knew could calm the storm, God. That night they knelt together in prayer, asking God to bring peace back to their marriage and to give them wisdom on how to move forward. "Lord," Mama Anna prayed softly, "you know our hearts, and you know Bakari's. Show us the way, and calm this storm in our family. Help us trust in your plan, and guide our son in making the right decision. A few days passed, and slowly the tension in their home began to ease. The silence between them was no longer filled with unspoken frustration, but with a quiet sense of waiting. Both had prayed fervently, and as they revisited the issue, a sense of peace washed over them. "My dear wife," Mzikibo said one morning, after finishing his devotions, "I've been thinking. Maybe we've been too focused on guiding Bakari in our way instead of trusting that God is already guiding him." Mama Anna smiled, relieved to hear the same thought had been stirring in her heart. "You're right. We raised him well. We should have trusted him to make a good decision. Maybe it's time we step back and let Bakari choose for himself." With a sense of calm they hadn't felt in weeks, they agreed to let go of their control over the situation. They knew they had done their part in raising Bakari with values, faith, and wisdom, and now it was time to trust that he would make the right choice. Unaware of the shift in his parents' hearts, Bakari had been spending time in deep prayer, seeking God's voice. The pressure of making such a monumental decision had weighed on him heavily. He didn't want to disappoint either of his parents, but he also knew that he couldn't delay the decision any longer. One night, after hours of prayer, Bakari found clarity. Psalm 32 verse 8 came to mind, "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go." In his heart, he knew that God had already shown him the answer. Subira might not have it all figured out. She didn't have a grand plan or an ambitious future laid out before her, but she had something that spoke deeply to Bakari's soul. Her compassion, humility, and unwavering faith were qualities that he knew would anchor their marriage in love and trust. Bakari chose Subira, not because of what she lacked, but because of what she had in abundance: a heart for God, a spirit of patience, and a deep well of love. With his decision made, Bakari visited his parents to share his choice. There was a knot in his stomach, still worried about how they would react, but he knew this was a step he had to take. Sitting at the dining table, Bakari began, "I've been praying a lot, and I believe God has shown me the way. I've decided to marry Subira." For a moment there was silence. Then, to Bakari's surprise, his mother smiled warmly. "My son," Mama Anna said, "we raised you to follow God's voice. We should have trusted that you would make a good decision." Mzikibo nodded, his eyes softening. "You are a man now, Bakari. We've always wanted the best for you, but this is your life, and if you believe Subira is the right choice, we will stand by you." A wave of relief washed over Bakari. He had feared that making this decision on his own might disappoint his parents, but instead, they had shown him the trust and faith they had in him. In that moment, the tension that had been pulling them apart dissolved, replaced by the love and unity that had always been at the core of their family. As they prayed together that night, thanking God for his guidance and for bringing peace back into their home, Bakari felt a deep sense of peace in his heart. The storm had passed, and now a new chapter in his life was about to begin, one built on love, faith, and trust in God's plan. The next morning, with a heart full of peace, Bakari made his way to Subira's home. The sun was bright, and the air carried a gentle warmth, a reflection of the joy and clarity he felt after the weight of indecision had lifted. Today, he was ready to share the news of his choice with Subira, the woman whose calm faith had captured his heart. As he arrived at Subira's modest home, the sight of her tending to her small garden filled him with a sense of admiration. She moved with quiet grace, her hands gently nurturing the plants as she hummed a soft tune. It was this simplicity, this gentle love for the world around her, that had drawn Bakari to her from the very beginning. "Subira!" he called out softly as he approached. Subira looked up, a warm smile lighting her face as she greeted him. "Bakari," she said, wiping her hands on her dress. "What brings you here today?" They sat on the small porch together, the breeze rustling the leaves around them. For a moment, Bakari felt a nervousness he hadn't expected. But as he looked at Subira, the woman who had patiently walked with him through this journey, the words began to flow. "Subira," he started, "I've spent the past few weeks in deep thought and prayer, trying to figure out what God's plan is for my life. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of advice from family, and I've had to search my own heart. But one thing has become clear to me. God has shown me the way, and it leads to you." Subira's eyes widened, her hands trembling slightly as she listened. "I've chosen you, Subira," Bakari continued, his voice steady. "I know you don't have all the answers about the future, and that's okay. What you do have is a heart filled with faith, compassion, and strength. I believe that with God's guidance we can face whatever the future holds, together." For a moment Subira was silent, her eyes glistening with emotion. Then, with a voice that trembled with gratitude, she whispered, "Thank you, Bakari. You don't know what this means to me." Subira looked down, a tear escaping her eye. "I've prayed so much about this. I've wondered if I was enough, if not having everything figured out would be a burden for you. But now, hearing you say this, I know that God truly has a plan for us." Bakari reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Subira, it's not about having everything figured out. It's about faith, about trusting God to guide us step by step. That's the kind of life I want to build, with you." They sat there for a while, holding hands in the quiet of the morning, feeling the weight of Bakari's decision settle into a new sense of purpose and hope. In the days that followed, Bakari and Subira began to plan their future together. They agreed to keep things simple, honoring the values that had brought them together: faith, love, and humility. They spoke about their dreams for a family, their desire to serve in the community, and their hope to always put God at the center of their lives. Bakari's parents, true to their word, offered their full support. Mama Anna, once so firmly in favor of Subira, was overjoyed with the decision. She began helping Subira with the wedding preparations, guiding her through traditions that had been passed down for generations. The tension that had once divided her and Mezi Kibo had been replaced with unity, and now they both stood behind their son, proud of the man he had become. Mzi Kibo, though quiet, had offered Bakari words of wisdom. "Marriage is about walking through life together," he had said one evening. "There will be challenges, but if you and Subira keep God at the center, nothing will be too difficult to overcome." As the day of the wedding approached, Bakari found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. It had been a path filled with doubt, tension, and many voices pulling him in different directions. But through it all, he had learned the power of prayer, the importance of trusting God's guidance, and the value of making decisions rooted in love and faith. The day of Bakari and Subira's wedding dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze blowing through the village. Friends and family gathered to celebrate the union, and the church was filled with the sound of joyful singing. Bakari stood at the altar, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and gratitude. When Subira entered, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, Bakari couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the grace and beauty that radiated from her. She was everything he had prayed for, and more. As they exchanged vows, promising to walk together in faith, Bakari felt a deep sense of peace. This was the path God had chosen for him, and now, standing beside Subira, he knew he had made the right decision. The ceremony was filled with blessings from family and friends, and as they left the church hand in hand, there was no doubt that God's hand had guided them to this moment. As Bakari and Subira embarked on their life together, they faced challenges, as all couples do. But with each step, they turned to God, trusting in the same faith that had brought them together. Their home became a place of love and warmth, a refuge where faith, compassion, and patience reigned. Bakari knew that he had chosen not just a wife, but a partner in faith. Subira's quiet strength and unwavering belief in God's plan had taught him that sometimes it wasn't about having everything figured out. It was about trusting in the one who does.